Have you ever wondered why some men fail to create a real connection even when everything about them seems right? On the surface, they have it all: the looks, the confidence, the lifestyle. And yet, something is missing. Not obvious, not loud, but you can feel it. It shows up in small moments: a pause that feels empty, a distance that shouldn't be there but is. Everything seems fine, but not deep. This isn't random. Most men focus on what can be seen, what they say, how they present themselves, how impressive they appear. But real attraction doesn't live there. It exists on a quieter level, a deeper one that doesn't need attention. Think about it for a second. How many times have you felt comfortable around someone without knowing why? And how many times have you felt something was off, even when everything looked perfect? That difference is everything. Emotions are not convinced by words. They are created through experience. And experience is built on small details, very small details. A glance, a pause, a shift in tone, and sometimes a simple touch. Not just any touch, but one that carries intention. This is where things start to change. A man who understands this does not try to impress. He creates a feeling, and feelings stay. Imagine this. You're sitting with her. The vibe is good. The conversation flows. There's laughter. Everything seems right. But still, there's a subtle wall. She's present, but not fully open. Engaged, but not deeply connected. There's a small gap, and it doesn't go away. This is where most men make the same mistake. They think the answer is more talking, more jokes, more stories, more effort to impress. But that doesn't fix it, because the issue was never the words. The issue is how she feels. A woman doesn't connect only through what she hears. She connects through what she experiences around you: your presence, your energy, the emotional space you create without even realizing it. And this is where one overlooked element comes in: calm, intentional touch before anything else. Not rushed, not forced, not excessive, just natural, simple, and aware. A light touch on her shoulder, a comfortable hug, a subtle moment of closeness at the right time. These things may seem small, but their impact is not small at all, because they communicate something deeper. Without words, they say, "I notice you. I'm calm. You can feel safe here." And that changes everything. When a woman feels safe, her guard drops naturally. You don't have to convince her. You don't have to prove anything. It just happens, quietly. This is where the real difference appears. A man who rushes creates tension. A man who hesitates too much creates distance. But a man who moves with awareness creates balance. And that balance is rare, because it requires something most men don't practice: attention. Being fully present, noticing the small shifts, reading what isn't said. Does she lean in or pull away? Does she relax or tense up? Does her energy open or close? These signals tell you everything, but only if you're paying attention. Most men aren't. They're busy thinking about what to say next, or how they look, or what will happen later. But the man who understands stays in the moment. He doesn't rush. He doesn't force an outcome. He allows things to unfold naturally. And something interesting happens here. The slower you go, the stronger the connection becomes. The calmer you are, the more impact you have. Not because you're trying, but because you're not trying in an obvious way. And that is felt. Touch, in this sense, is not about physical closeness. It's about emotional connection. It says, "I'm here without pressure. I'm close without urgency." And that kind of presence is powerful, because it doesn't take, it allows. And in that space, something real begins to form.
something that can't be faked, something that builds moment by moment. Now there's another layer to this: self-control. Not controlling her, but controlling yourself. Not reacting to every impulse, not rushing out of fear of losing the moment. Staying grounded, even when you feel the urge to move faster. This kind of control creates a very specific feeling, one that's hard to describe. Confidence without arrogance, interest without pressure, closeness without losing balance. That combination is rare because it requires awareness. Awareness of what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. A man who acts without awareness often ruins the moment without realizing it. One wrong move, one rushed step, one unnecessary action, and the feeling shifts. But a man who is aware maintains the rhythm. He doesn't speed up unnaturally. He doesn't hold back out of fear of rejection. He simply flows with the moment. And that flow is what makes the experience different. Not ordinary, not predictable, but memorable. Something that lingers, because in the end, it's not what you said that stays with her. It's how she felt. Words fade, feelings don't. And those feelings are built from these small moments, the ones most men overlook.
There is another layer most men never truly see because it's too quiet to notice. It doesn't show in loud reactions, it doesn't come with clear signals, but it shapes everything. The way she looks at you, the way she listens or doesn't, the way she decides without saying it how she feels about you. And it all comes down to something simple: emotional presence. Not what you say, not what you do, but how you exist in the moment. Most men are physically there, but mentally somewhere else, thinking ahead, planning responses, trying to manage the outcome. And in doing that, they disconnect. Because real connection doesn't happen in the future, it happens now, in the silence between words, in the way you listen, in how you respond without rushing. A woman can feel when you're not fully present, even if she can't explain it. She feels it in your energy, in your timing, in the subtle tension you carry. And that tension creates distance. But when you're fully there, something shifts. Your words slow down. Your reactions become natural. Your attention becomes real. And that creates something rare: comfort. Not forced comfort, not polite interaction, but a deeper kind. The kind where she doesn't feel the need to perform, where she doesn't feel watched or judged, just at ease. And when that happens, she opens. Not because you made her, but because she wants to. This is where most men misunderstand attraction. They think it's about doing more, saying more, showing more. But often, it's about doing less. Less forcing, less overthinking, less trying to control every moment. There's a quiet confidence in that, a confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. And that is powerful. Because when you stop trying to control how she sees you, you start showing who you really are. And that authenticity is what stands out. Not perfection, realness. There's something else that begins to change too: your reactions. Most men react quickly, too quickly. A small comment and they shift. A slight change in her tone and they adjust. A moment of distance and they panic internally. But a man who understands himself doesn't react like that. He notices, but he doesn't jump. He feels, but he doesn't lose balance. There's a pause inside him, a space between what happens and how he responds. That space is everything. Because inside it, you choose. You're not driven by impulse. You're not pulled by fear. You respond with clarity. And that clarity creates stability. When a woman feels that stability, she relaxes more. Because she's not dealing with unpredictability. She's not trying to figure out your next move.
She feels grounded. And that grounding is deeply attractive, not in a loud way, but in a lasting way. There's also something important about restraint, not holding back out of fear, but choosing not to rush. Most men think moving fast creates excitement, but real attraction builds in space, in moments that are not rushed, in tension that is not forced. When you slow down, you allow anticipation to exist, and anticipation is powerful. It creates curiosity. It creates engagement. It makes the experience feel alive. But when everything is rushed, that disappears. It becomes predictable, flat, and easy to forget. A man who understands this doesn't chase moments. He allows them. He doesn't try to win her over. He simply shares the space fully. And in that space, she begins to feel something different. Not pressure, not expectation, but freedom. Freedom to be herself. Freedom to feel without being pushed. And when someone feels free around you, they naturally want to stay. Another thing most men overlook is emotional awareness, not just of her, but of themselves. What are you feeling right now? Are you calm or tense, present or distracted? Because whatever you feel transfers. Energy doesn't need words. It shows in your body language, in your tone, in your timing. If you're anxious, she feels that. If you're grounded, she feels that too. And people are naturally drawn to calm energy. It feels safe. It feels steady. In a world full of noise and unpredictability, that steadiness stands out. But it has to be real. It can't be acted, because anything forced breaks under pressure. So the question becomes, can you sit in a moment without needing to change it? Can you stay present without trying to control what happens next? Can you be okay without immediate validation? These are not simple things, but they define everything. Because when you reach that point, you stop chasing reactions, you stop needing constant feedback, and you start experiencing the moment as it is. That's when your presence changes. It becomes quieter, but stronger, less reactive, but more impactful. And people notice that even if they don't understand why, because what they feel is real.
At a certain point, everything becomes simpler. Not because life suddenly changes, but because you do. You stop trying to create perfect moments. You stop analyzing every reaction. You stop asking yourself, did I say the right thing? And instead, you begin to trust something deeper, your presence. Not the version of you that is trying to impress, but the one that is simply there, calm, aware, unforced. There's a quiet shift that happens when you reach this place. You no longer feel the need to fill every silence. You don't rush to entertain. You don't chase approval through words or actions. You become comfortable just being. And that comfort is rare, because most people are not at ease with silence. They rush to speak. They rush to act. They rush to avoid that empty space. But the man who understands lets silence breathe. He allows moments to exist without trying to control them. And in those moments, something subtle begins to build. Tension. Not uncomfortable tension, but a quiet awareness. A sense that something is happening even without words. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It comes from within, from knowing that you don't need to prove anything, from being okay with whatever direction the moment takes. And this is where attraction changes completely. It's no longer about gaining attention. It's about holding space. Space where she feels seen without being examined. Space where she feels understood without needing to explain everything. Space where she can relax without wondering what you expect from her. When you create that space, you become different from most men she has experienced. Not louder, not more impressive, but more real.
And real always stands out. There's also a certain emotional strength that begins to show. Not through dominance, not through control, but through stability. Your mood doesn't swing based on her reactions. Your confidence doesn't depend on her approval. If she is warm, you appreciate it. If she is distant, you remain the same. Not cold, not detached, just steady. And that steadiness is deeply felt because it removes pressure. She doesn't feel like she has to manage your emotions. She doesn't feel responsible for keeping your attention. She simply experiences you as you are. And that creates ease. Ease leads to comfort. Comfort leads to trust. And trust is where real attraction lives. There's also power in what you don't do. Not reacting instantly. Not chasing when there's distance. Not forcing progression when the moment isn't ready. This restraint speaks louder than action. It shows that you are not driven by fear, not controlled by urgency. It shows that you understand timing. And timing changes everything. When you move too fast, you break the rhythm. When you hold back too much, you lose the connection. But when you feel the moment and move with it, everything aligns, naturally. This awareness cannot come from memorized techniques. It comes from being present enough to notice, to feel, to respond instead of react. And when you live like this, your interactions become different, more fluid, more natural, more real. You stop trying to create attraction and you start allowing it. There's also something deeper happening beneath all of this. You are no longer seeking validation. Not in her reactions, not in her words, not in the outcome. You are simply experiencing. And when you remove the need for validation, you remove pressure from yourself and from her. That absence of pressure creates freedom. Freedom for things to grow or not grow. And strangely, that is what makes them grow. Because nothing real develops under force. Everything real develops in space. Space that is calm, space that is patient, space that is genuine. When you offer that space, you become someone she remembers, not because of what you did, but because of how she felt. And that feeling stays, long after the moment ends, long after the words are forgotten. Because in the end, people don't remember perfection. They remember presence. They remember how easy it felt to be around you, how natural it felt to exist in that moment. And that is something most men never learn. They spend years trying to become more impressive without realizing that what truly matters is becoming more real. And when you finally understand that, you stop chasing connection. And for the first time, connection begins to find you.